the operating and maintenance, which is going to, they're not going to change a whole lot, but the price of your fuel is going to change depending upon, now they don't have a cost of fuel over there, but all of these over here do. The fixed O&M is, greasing, oiling, and things like that. And then the transmission investment is basically getting the electrons from wherever they are to wherever you're going to use them. Okay? So the unfortunate thing about renewables is while they do make an awful lot of sense, they don't make an awful lot of sense everywhere. Here in Kentucky, our solar potential is terrible. Our wind potential is even worse. We do have a very good potential for biomass. In Arizona, their biomass doesn't exist. Nothing grows in Arizona. However, their solar potential is very good. So this is just kind of a general snapshot of what the whole thing looks like across the United States. How does this justification for this policy, I think, is shown right here, that in the past, we've looked at global warming as the impetus to do these kind of things, and I think that the general population is not buying this, and they're certainly not buying it this winter. Okay, so we've seen the whole global warming argument morph into climate change. And I think there's an awful lot of skeptical people about that as well, and whether that is an impetus for us to make this radical change in the way we use energy. I think what is going to happen is we're going to see everything evolve into sustainability. And I think that's a buy-in that most people can really sink their teeth into, that we have finite resources, we must use them wisely. They are not going to last forever. Therefore, we must develop the ones that have a little bit more infinite potential, like wind, solar type, things like that. So I think that we're going to be hearing more of this than we are of this, because I think the general population is pretty skeptical, given what happened at East Anglia, given the obvious manipulation of the data. I think the scientific community is basically, yep.
I mean, are you referring to when you said obvious manipulation of the data, are you referring to the East Anglia?
I think that's part of it, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think that they've lost credibility. I think there's a very strong argument to the contrary, which has been silenced and suppressed. And we have not had an open dialogue. We have not. I cannot publish in those journals. They will not allow me to publish, because I obviously have a biased opinion. I support coal. Therefore, I have no idea what I'm talking about. I do know what I'm talking about. Okay, I really do. I think that one of the ways this policy is implemented is through the permitting process. And this is the part that most people don't see. If you want to get a permit for a renewable energy resource, the most recent ones have taken 1 year to 8 months. California now has an online program where in 6 weeks you can permit a solar installation in California. If you want to get a natural gas permit for your power plant, it's going to take you 6 months. That's the most recent one in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. If you want a coal permit, the two most recent ones, one in Kentucky, took 5 years to get to this point. They were issued just a couple months ago. Now we enter into the appeals process, which will take 3 to 5 years. So it's about 8 to 10 years to get a coal permit. If you want a nuclear permit, well, the last one we did took 24 years. So you will probably not see a nuclear power plant come online, regardless of all of the fanfare that we had a year ago with the announcement of Southern Company's new nuclear power plant. It's going to take who knows how long to do that. So you are running a power company, you got a customer base that's expanding, you need more electricity. Even though this may be your cost-effective option, because of the court process, you are forced to do one of these two right here, because you can't wait, your customers can't wait for 10 years. So you are forced to the court system to do that. So you've made the playing field unlevel in favor of renewable or whatever your choice is going to be. You can implement it via mandate. These are state mandates. 35 states in the United States have implemented mandates requiring the state generating capacity come from varying amounts of renewable resources by certain dates. Kentucky does not have one of these, fortunately. Ours makes a little more sense than forcing it, because the cost to do this is passed directly onto the consumer regardless, without any say-so by the Public Service Commission. So, and plus this is kind of a lot of smoke, doesn't really make a lot of sense, because if you look at places like Washington State, they have the whopping goal of 15% renewable generation. Well, big deal. They have all that hydroelectric power up there anyway. So they're right now producing 75% of their electricity by renewables. So what is the point of having a mandate of 15% when you generate 75% of your power by renewables anyway? So it's silly. So some places have actually done very well. Other places have done very poorly. The one I will call a point is California. Right here, they've done very well. I pick on California regularly in my coursework because I enjoy doing that, because they do not allow coal to be burned in California, but when they don't have enough electricity, they buy their electricity from coal-producing states. So do they burn in the state? No. Do they use coal to generate electricity? Absolutely. They buy a lot of electricity, and it all comes from the Four Corners in Mexico or from Utah, and it's all coal-based, even though the actual fire is not in California. There are some inconsistencies along the way, and this is where we may have some differences of opinions. This whole good CO2, bad CO2 argument, if it's derived from fossil fuels, it is bad CO2. If it's derived from ethanol or from algae converted into biodiesel, that's okay. No, CO2, CO2.
Who has said it's good CO2 on biomass?
Who has said it's good CO2? If you look at it, you'll hear this argument regularly. It's kind of not so popular anymore, but if we were serious about reducing our CO2 production, then we would have the same rules apply to both. However, if you look at what was attempted to be passed through Congress, it did not touch that. It was all this. It had absolutely nothing to do with automobile exhaust. In fact, we are subsidizing ethanol and biodiesel production and artificially shifting CO2 production this way, away from here. Another inconsistency that I see is mercury. We are spending millions of dollars a year to capture mercury from coal-fired power plants. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing to do. However, the trade-off is that we are generating tens of millions of tons of solid waste in the process of doing that. So at the same time, we are forcing everybody to use these curlicue light bulbs, each of which contain 4 to 5 milligrams of mercury, every one of which is made in China. So it's not so much about keeping mercury out of the environment. I don't believe that for a minute. I believe, again, you're forcing scrubbers to be put in here to raise the cost of using fossil fuels. It's not about keeping mercury out of the environment, because we put it right back in again, right there. I think there's an inconsistency in the way that we use our electricity. You know, we're not going to be allowed to do this because we're supposed to put in those curlicue light bulbs. However, that is okay. So if you look at the energy projections, how in the world are we going to fuel all these electric vehicles in the future if we don't have the electric infrastructure to generate the electrons to actually put into these? We have to have the electrical base. Groundwater risk. This is an area near and dear to my heart. It's where I spent most of my career working with coal ash. Arguably the most successful recycling program ever encountered in the world. It is under fire by EPA because of the potential for groundwater contamination. Totally fabricated, ignoring the science. However, when it comes to fracking of natural gas, we are intentionally fracturing the shale of 800 feet below the surface of the earth and completely modifying and manipulating and randomly changing the groundwater flow just to get natural gas. It's okay. So there are no regulations. You can do this all you want. This is actually under great scrutiny by EPA. So I think there's an enormous double standard there. Of course, environmentalists don't like either one of these. And I can see their argument over here. I do not see their argument here because there is no science to support this. But nevertheless, this is where EPA is spending all the time. And that